I caught my sister with my fiancé 6 weeks before our wedding. By sunrise, I was married to Chicago's most feared mafia boss. You may think betrayal breaks a woman all at once. It doesn't. Sometimes it happens quietly in the apartment she decorated beneath the walls she painted, while the two people she trusted most whisper excuses and expect her to forgive them. That night, Evelyn Parker walked into the freezing Chicago rain with no suitcase, no plan, and no place to go. Hours later, she stood inside an abandoned freight terminal, blood on her sleeve, a marriage license before her, and Damian Cross watching from across the table. This is not only a revenge story. It is about what happens when a woman stops carrying everyone else and finally chooses herself. Stay until the end. Like the video and tell me where you're watching from. 8 hours before Evelyn Parker signed her name beside Damian Cross, there was no blood on her sleeve, no armed men outside a freight terminal, and no gold band circling her finger. There were only wedding cards. 300 of them rested inside 2 white boxes balanced against her hip as she crossed a parking garage beneath downtown Chicago. Each card was printed on thick ivory paper, bordered in gold, and stamped with words Evie had once believed. Evelyn Parker and Grant Holloway. December 14th. Forever starts here. A cold wind pushed through the open levels of the garage, lifting strands of dark hair from Evie's coat collar. The first snow of the season had fallen 2 days earlier, but the city had already turned it gray. Slush gathered beneath parked cars. Salt cracked beneath her heels. Her phone rang inside her purse. Evie shifted the boxes against a concrete column and found the phone beneath a folder of vendor contracts. The florist. She considered letting it ring. She answered on the final vibration. "Hi, Marissa." "Evie. I hate to bother you again, but we still need final approval on the table arrangements. The white roses are available, but if you want the winter greenery, I need an answer before 5. Evie checked the time. 3:46. She had a client presentation at 4:30. The wedding stationery shop had taken twice as long as promised. Grant had forgotten to send the cake deposit. Her mother had called 3 times about Chloe's bridesmaid dress. "Use the greenery," Evie said. "Keep the roses around the candles." "Perfect. I also sent the revised invoice." "Of course you did." Marissa laughed, unaware that Evie had not made a joke. When the call ended, a message appeared from the bakery. "Final deposit overdue. Please contact us to avoid cancellation." Evie stared at the screen. Grant had promised to handle it, not offered. Promised. She called him. He answered after 4 rings, his voice low and distracted. "Hey, I'm about to walk into a meeting. The bakery still has not received the deposit." A pause followed, filled with office noise and the faint murmur of another conversation. "Didn't you send it? You said you would." "Right. I meant to. Today got away from me." "Grant, they are threatening to cancel the order. They won't cancel a wedding cake over 1 late payment. They sent a cancellation notice. Then can you cover it? I'll transfer the money tonight." Evie closed her eyes. The concrete beneath her feet seemed to tilt by half an inch. "You told me this was the one vendor you would manage. It is 1 payment, Evie. It was 1 responsibility. Why are you making it sound like I abandoned you at the altar?" His tone was still calm. Grant never shouted. He did not need to. He had a way of speaking that made frustration sound unreasonable the moment it came from someone else. Evie looked down at the wedding cards. "Forever starts here. I'll take care of it," she said. "Thank you. I knew you would." He lowered his voice. "Love you." Evie felt the words pass through her without finding anything to hold. "Love you too." She ended the call, opened the bakery invoice, and paid the deposit from her personal account. The transaction took less than 30 seconds. That was the problem with being capable. People rarely noticed the weight of what you carried when you never allowed it to hit the floor. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was her mother. "Did you speak to Chloe?" "She says the dress makes her look enormous." Evie typed a response. The dress was altered twice. It looks beautiful on her. 3 dots appeared immediately. She is very sensitive right now. Please try to be patient. Evie deleted the answer forming in her head. Chloe was always sensitive. Sensitive when she forgot rent. Sensitive when she missed their father's final hospital appointment because she had gone away with a musician she met at a concert. Sensitive when she borrowed Evie's car and returned it with a dent she could not explain. Sensitive when consequences arrived. Evie was the strong one. In the Parker family, strength did not mean anyone protected you. It meant they assumed you could absorb whatever would break someone else. A woman pushing a stroller passed between the parked cars and smiled at the boxes. Wedding. Evie glanced at the gold lettering visible beneath the lid. That obvious. The woman laughed. You must be excited. Evie opened her mouth. The correct answer was yes. She had used it at bridal showers, fittings, tastings, and office lunches. She had said it until the word felt like something printed on a card by somebody who had never met her. I am, she said. The woman continued toward the elevator. Evie stood alone beside the concrete column. She tried to remember the last time she had felt excited about marrying Grant. Not relieved, not secure, not grateful that he had chosen her. Excited. Nothing came. Grant Holloway was the kind of man mothers trusted immediately. He wore navy suits, remembered to stand when older women left the table, and knew how to order wine without sounding impressed by himself. He worked as a financial consultant in a glass office overlooking the river. His hair always looked recently cut. His shoes never showed dirt. When Evie introduced him to Linda 3 years earlier, her mother had smiled before dinner was over. He feels safe, she had whispered in the kitchen. At 26, safe had sounded romantic. At 29, it sounded like a building with no windows. Grant did not gamble. He did not disappear for days. He did not start fights in restaurants or become cruel after drinking. He remembered anniversaries when calendar alerts reminded him. He replaced the batteries in smoke detectors. He checked the locks before bed. He also never planned a trip unless Evie sent him hotel options. He never noticed groceries were gone until she replaced them. He never asked who scheduled the dentist appointments, paid the utility bills, remembered his mother's birthday, or bought gifts for clients he needed to impress. He called Evie amazing whenever he wanted her to continue doing something he had no intention of learning. At first, she had accepted the word as praise. Lately, it sounded more like permission. Evie carried the boxes to her car, placed them carefully in the back seat, and drove toward her office. Chicago moved around her beneath a colorless sky. Trains rattled over steel tracks. Pedestrians leaned into the wind. Steam rose through street grates and folded around taxis caught at red lights. Her agency occupied the 17th floor of a building near Michigan Avenue. By the time she reached the conference room, her cheeks were cold. Her coffee was untouched, and the client was already waiting on the screen. Evie connected her laptop without mentioning the bakery. For 45 minutes, she spoke about customer trust, brand consistency, and the hidden emotional reasons people chose one company over another. The client wanted higher conversion numbers. Evie explained that customers did not abandon purchases because they lacked interest. They abandoned them because something near the final step made them feel unsafe. People rarely announce the moment trust disappears, she said. They simply stop moving forward. Her supervisor, Mason Reed, nodded as if she had offered him a sentence worth repeating later. The client approved the campaign. Everyone congratulated Mason. He thanked the team. Evie closed her laptop and began collecting the empty coffee cups. Mason touched her arm before leaving. Excellent work. I knew you would save this. There it was again. Save this. Fix it. Handle it. You are the strong one. Evie smiled because smiling required less explanation. Her phone lit up with another message from Linda. Chloe is crying in the fitting room. Evie looked at the dark conference screen and saw her reflection staring back. She should have stayed at the office. She should have allowed Chloe to cry. Instead, she packed her laptop and drove to the bridal boutique. Chloe stood on a raised platform beneath warm lights when Evie arrived. She wore the pale silver dress they had selected months earlier. The fabric fell cleanly over her narrow waist and brushed the floor around her feet. She looked beautiful. She also looked devastated. Linda stood beside her with both hands clasped beneath her chin. The seamstress hovered near a rack of dresses wearing the exhausted expression of a woman who had already been blamed for somebody else's feelings. Chloe met Evie's eyes in the mirror. "I look terrible." "You don't." "My hips look huge." "They don't." "The color makes me look dead." "You chose the color." Chloe's lower lip trembled. "I knew you would say that." Evie placed her purse on a velvet chair. "What did you expect me to say?" Linda gave her a warning look. "She is trying to tell you how she feels." "No. She is asking for a third dress." Chloe turned away from the mirror. "I don't want to ruin your wedding photos." The statement was clever. It made vanity sound like sacrifice. Evie walked closer and adjusted the fabric at Chloe's shoulder. "You look beautiful." "I don't feel beautiful." "Those are not always the same problem." Chloe's eyes filled. The seamstress suddenly became interested in a box of pins. Linda stepped between them. "Evie, it is one dress. It is the second replacement. Money is not everything." Evie looked at her mother. "It becomes important when I am the person paying." Linda's face tightened. "We will pay you back." Evie knew they would not. Chloe climbed down from the platform and pulled the curtain around the fitting room. A soft sob came from behind it. Linda lowered her voice. "She has been struggling. With what? Everything changing. You getting married. The family feeling different. I am moving 10 minutes away from where I already live. That is not the point." Evie looked toward the curtain. "What is the point?" Linda sighed, as if Evie were deliberately making a simple situation difficult. "You have always had direction. Chloe has not. She sees you with a career and a stable relationship, and she feels left behind. So I should buy another dress. I am asking you to show compassion." Evie almost laughed. Compassion had become the word people used when they wanted something from her, without calling it a demand. The fitting room curtain opened. Chloe had changed into her jeans and sweater. Her eyes were red, but her mascara remained perfectly intact. "I can wear the dress," she whispered. "I don't want everyone fighting because of me." Nobody was fighting. Chloe had a talent for creating a fire and then appearing noble for standing near the smoke. Evie looked at the seamstress. "What other colors can arrive before December?" 20 minutes later, Evie paid for a dark blue dress with a rush alteration fee. Outside the boutique, snow had begun to fall in thin, uncertain flakes. Chloe wrapped both arms around Evie. "You always fix everything." The words were warm against Evie's coat. She stood still until Chloe released her. On the drive home, Grant called. "Where are you leaving Chloe's fitting?" Again, she needed another dress. Grant laughed softly. "You spoil her." Evie tightened her hands around the steering wheel. She cried. Mom asked, "I paid." "You could say no." The simplicity of the statement struck her. Grant said no constantly. He simply disguised it as forgetting being busy or trusting Evie's judgment. "What are you doing home?" she asked. "I finished early. You said you had meetings until 7. One canceled. Do you want me to pick up dinner? I already ate something." Of course he had. Evie glanced at the time. The wedding stationery waited in her back seat. She still needed to organize the cards, review the guest list, and send the final count to the hotel. "I'll be home soon." Grant hesitated. "You do not have to rush." The words should have sounded considerate. Instead, something inside her paused. "What does that mean?" Nothing. I know you have a lot going on. A faint sound came through the phone. A floorboard or fabric moving. Is someone there? No. The answer came too quickly. Evie waited. Grant cleared his throat. The television is on. She could not hear a television. Okay, she said. I love you. There it was again, a sentence placed carefully over a crack. Evie ended the call. She could have stopped for dinner. She could have returned to the office. She could have driven anywhere else. Instead, she turned toward River North. The condominium building stood between a luxury hotel and a restaurant where Grant proposed 11 months earlier. The doorman nodded as Evie entered with the wedding card boxes. Big day getting closer, he said. Apparently. The elevator carried her to the 12th floor. Her reflection in the mirrored wall looked composed. Dark wool coat, black heels. Hair still smooth from the morning. A woman with a career, a wedding, and a dependable man waiting at home. The doors opened. Evie walked down the quiet corridor. She reached the condo and shifted the boxes to find her keys. The door was unlocked. Grant always locked it. Evie entered. Warm air touched her face. The condo smelled faintly of the cedar candle she kept near the kitchen sink. Grant's shoes were beside the entry table, one lying on its side. His briefcase was open on the kitchen island. His phone rested beside it. Evie placed her keys in the ceramic bowl. The small sound carried through the apartment. Grant. No answer. She stepped farther inside. A wine glass stood near the sink. A second glass sat beside the sofa. Red lipstick marked the rim. Evie stared at it. Chloe wore red lipstick. The thought arrived without permission. She rejected it immediately. Chloe borrowed everything. She visited without warning. She might have stopped by because she was still upset about the dress. Evie set the boxes on the kitchen island. One corner had bent during the drive. She smoothed it with her thumb. A low sound came from the dining room. Not a voice. A breath cut short. Evie's body understood before her mind did. Her hands became cold. She moved toward the hallway separating the kitchen from the dining area. The botanical mural covered the far wall in deep shades of green and black. Evie had painted it herself over 6 weekends, balancing on a ladder while Grant complained that the furniture was covered in plastic. She had chosen every leaf, every shadow, every gold line winding through the branches. Grant was pressed against it. His white shirt hung open. His belt was unfastened. Chloe stood between him and the wall wrapped in Evie's ivory silk robe. Grant's hand was beneath the fabric at her waist. Chloe's lipstick was smeared across his mouth. For several seconds, the room remained perfectly still. A framed engagement photograph slipped from the narrow shelf and landed face down on the hardwood. Grant moved first. He stepped away from Chloe so quickly that his shoulder struck the mural. Evie. Chloe pulled the robe closed. Her eyes widened. Then Evie watched the calculation happen. Shock became fear. Fear became tears. Evie, Chloe whispered. The boxes of wedding cards rested on the island behind her. The florist had been paid. The cake had been saved. The second bridesmaid dress was being altered. All the tiny pieces of Evie's life remained exactly where she had placed them. Only the center had disappeared. Grant reached for his shirt buttons. This is not what you think. Evie looked at Chloe's bare leg, Grant's open belt, and the lipstick on his face. What do I think? Grant swallowed. It got out of control. What did... We were talking. Chloe made a wounded sound. I came over because I was upset. Evie turned toward her sister. Chloe tightened the robe around herself. I felt like I was losing you, she said. Everything is changing and you have been so busy with the wedding. Evie's voice came out calm. You were afraid of losing me. Chloe nodded through her tears. So you slept with my fiancé. It did not start that way. Grant stepped closer. She was having a difficult day. I was trying to comfort her. Evie looked at him. With your belt open? His face reddened. I know how it looks. You keep saying that as though the appearance is the problem. It was a mistake. Evie walked to the kitchen island. One of the boxes had opened. Ivory cards had spilled across the counter. Forever starts here. She picked up a card and ran her finger across Grant's printed name. Do you know what a mistake is? Neither of them answered. A mistake is sending a file to the wrong client. A mistake is missing an exit. You had to make several decisions to get your shirt open. Grant's expression tightened. Evie, please. Chloe began crying harder. I know you hate me. Evie placed the card down. No. Chloe blinked. That would require me to still recognize you. Grant moved toward Evie. She raised one hand. Do not touch me. He stopped. We can fix this. The word entered the room and made something inside her go still. I love you. Evie looked at the man she had planned to marry. He loved the apartment she maintained, the appointments she scheduled, the dinners she remembered, the life she organized so carefully that he never had to wonder what would happen if he failed to carry his share. No, she said. You love being loved by me. That is not fair. No. Fair was 6 weeks from now. Fair was 300 guests watching me promise my life to a man who had already given pieces of it to my sister. Chloe's tears stopped for half a second. Something sharper appeared beneath them. You always do this. Evie turned. Do what talk like you are better than everyone. I caught you with my fiancé. You have everything. The words burst from Chloe before she could reshape them. The job, this place, Grant. Mom always trusts you. Everyone thinks you are so perfect. Evie stared at her. Images moved through her mind. Chloe calling at midnight because she could not pay rent. Chloe missing their father's hospital appointment. Chloe borrowing clothes, money, cars, excuses. Evie fixing everything. You did not want Grant, Evie said quietly. Chloe's mouth opened. You wanted something that belonged to me to choose you. Grant stepped between them with his shirt still partly open. That is enough. Evie looked at him. You are defending her. She is upset. The clarity of it was almost beautiful. Grant had betrayed her, yet Chloe's feelings still occupied the center of the room. Evie looked down at her engagement ring. The diamond was tasteful, modest, and selected with Grant's mother. She had told herself she loved it because it was practical. She twisted it once and pulled it from her finger. Grant's face changed. Don't. Evie placed the ring on the wedding card bearing his name. No dramatic throw. No final performance. Just a small piece of jewelry resting on a promise that had already expired. Keep the condo, she said. Keep the cards. Keep each other. She picked up her purse. Chloe followed her into the entryway. Evie, I am your sister. Evie looked at the ivory robe. My sister would not be wearing my clothes while asking me to understand why she touched my fiancé. She opened the door. Grant followed her into the corridor barefoot. You cannot just leave. Evie pressed the elevator button. Watch me. Her phone rang before the doors opened. Linda, Evie answered. Her mother spoke without greeting her. Grant called me. Chloe is hysterical. Evie looked back toward the condo. Grant stood in the doorway. Behind him, Chloe clutched the robe at her throat. Did you ask if I was all right? Silence. Then Linda sighed. Of course I am worried about you. But you are the strong one. Chloe has always been emotionally fragile. Please do not do anything impulsive. The elevator doors opened. Evie stepped inside. I found my sister with the man I was supposed to marry, and you are calling to protect her from my reaction. That is not what I mean. It is exactly what you mean. Evie families survive terrible mistakes when people refuse to make them worse. Evie watched Grant until the elevator doors began closing between them. No, Mom. Families survive by deciding which person is expected to bleed quietly. She ended the call. By the time she reached the lobby, her hands were shaking. Outside, snow had become freezing rain. It struck the sidewalk in silver lines and darkened her coat within seconds. Evie stood beneath the building awning with her purse, her phone, and nothing else. Her laptop remained upstairs. Her passport, her grandmother's necklace, her clothes, her work files, the blue mug she bought after her first promotion. Her entire life was still inside the condo with Grant and Chloe. For one moment, she nearly went back. Not for him, for herself. Then her phone began vibrating again. Grant. She rejected the call. Chloe. She rejected it. Linda. She turned the phone off. A cab slowed near the curb. Evie raised her hand. The driver leaned across and opened the back door. Where to? Evie entered and looked toward the 12th floor. Warm light glowed behind the windows of the home she had built. Two figures moved behind the glass. I do not care. The driver studied her in the mirror. That is not an address. Evie pressed her bare ring finger into her palm. Drive toward the river. The cab pulled away. Downtown Chicago passed in wet reflections. Towers disappeared into low clouds. Traffic lights bled red and gold across the pavement. Couples hurried beneath umbrellas. Restaurant windows glowed with the lives of people who still knew where they were going. The driver did not ask questions. That small mercy almost broke her. After 20 minutes, polished storefronts gave way to warehouses, fenced lots, and old brick buildings crouched beneath the elevated tracks. The Chicago River moved beside them, black beneath the freezing rain. The cab stopped outside a narrow building with dark windows and a weathered brass sign. The Iron Chapel. Evie paid without counting the bills. You gave me too much, the driver said. Keep it. She stepped onto the pavement. The bar door had no handle, only a brass plate worn smooth by years of secret hands. Evie pushed it open. Warm darkness closed around her. At the far end of the bar, a man in a black suit lifted his eyes from a glass of whiskey. Every other person in the room immediately looked away. The man in the black suit did not look away. Evie stood inside the doorway of the Iron Chapel with freezing rain sliding from her hair onto the collar of her coat. Behind her, the door closed with a deep wooden groan, shutting out the traffic, the river wind, and the last familiar pieces of the life she had left behind. The bar smelled of whiskey smoke, old wood, and secrets that had settled too deeply into the walls to be washed away. A blues song played softly from a speaker near the back. Two men sat over a game of cards without speaking. A woman in a red dress watched the melting ice in her glass. Behind the counter, a gray-haired bartender polished a tumbler with a cloth that looked older than the building. Nobody asked why Evie was wet. Nobody asked why her hand kept closing around a finger that no longer wore a ring. She crossed the room and took a stool near the far end of the bar. The bartender approached. What can I get you, bourbon? He waited. Evie removed her coat and placed it across the empty stool beside her. The bottle. His eyes moved briefly to her bare left hand. Whatever he saw there convinced him not to argue. He set down a glass and a dark bottle without a label. Evie poured until the bourbon nearly touched the rim. The first swallow burned all the way down. She welcomed it. Heat spread through her empty stomach sharp enough to replace the image of Grant's open shirt for half a second. She drank again. Across the room, the man in the black suit continued watching her. He was not handsome in the polished way Grant was handsome. There was nothing safe about his face. His nose looked as if it had been broken once and never properly reset. A pale scar disappeared beneath the edge of his jaw. His dark hair was combed back, but a few strands had fallen loose near his temple. His hands rested beside his glass, large and still, the knuckles marked with old cuts. He wore no wedding ring. He wore another kind of ring on his right hand, black stone set in gold. The bartender approached him without being called and placed a fresh glass of whiskey on the counter. The man did not thank him. The bartender did not expect him to. Evie poured another drink. The man rose from his seat. The room changed before he took a single step. The card players stopped moving. The woman in red lowered her eyes. Even the bartender found something urgent to clean beneath the counter. The man walked toward Evie and stopped beside the coat-covered stool. "Is this seat taken?" "Yes." He moved her coat to the stool on his other side and sat down. Evie stared at him. "I said yes." "I heard you. That usually means someone should go away." "Usually." She looked around the bar. "You own this place, no. Then why does everyone look like they are waiting for your permission to breathe?" He lifted his glass. "Perhaps they have poor lungs." Evie should have been frightened. Instead, she laughed. It was a small, broken sound, but it was the first honest thing her body had done since she opened the condo door. The man studied her. "Bad night." Evie looked into her glass. "My fiancé was sleeping with my sister 6 weeks before our wedding." The man's expression did not soften. He did not offer sympathy. He did not tell her that everything happened for a reason. He took a drink and said, "Messy." Evie turned toward him. "That is all you have. You do not look like you came here to be comforted." "What do I look like? I came here for?" His eyes moved over her face, not with hunger, but with attention. A match. The word settled between them. Evie looked down and noticed an ivory wedding card protruding from the pocket of her coat. She must have placed it there at the stationery shop. She pulled it free. "Evelyn Parker and Grant Holloway. Forever starts here." She tore it once, then again, and dropped the pieces into an empty ashtray. "I have 300 guests," she said. "A ballroom, a string quartet, imported flowers, a cake that costs more than my first car, and no groom." The man turned his whiskey slowly. "Then do not cancel." Evie stared at him. "I may be drunk, but I am not drunk enough to understand that." "Change the groom." A laugh escaped her. This one was louder. "Of course. I will walk outside, stop the first man with a pulse, and ask if he is available on December 14th. The man did not smile. "That depends on whether you want a wedding or revenge." "I want neither. Not yet." Evie narrowed her eyes. "You speak as though you know me. I know what someone looks like when humiliation is still warmer than grief." The words cut through the alcohol. She looked away first. "What is your name, Damien?" "Just Damien." "For now." "Then I am just Evie." "I know." Her fingers tightened around the glass. "How?" He nodded toward the torn card in the ashtray. "Your name was printed in gold." She exhaled. "That is less disturbing than the answer I expected. Give it time." Rain struck the dark windows harder. Somewhere near the front of the bar, the old door opened. Cold air moved through the room. 3 men entered. They wore black coats darkened by rain. The first was broad through the shoulders with a shaved head and a crooked nose. His right hand remained inside his coat. The bartender disappeared through a door behind the shelves. Evie felt the silence before she understood it. The man beside her placed his glass on the counter. The newcomer smiled. Damien Cross. The name struck Evie with the force of recognition. She had seen it in business articles. Cross Freight Holdings. Cross Construction. cross security. A dozen companies tied to city contracts, shipping terminals, and investigations that never reached trial. Grant had mentioned the Cross family once after too much wine. He had lowered his voice when he said the name. Damian Cross turned slightly on his stool. Raphael. Vincent Moretti wants a conversation. Vincent has my number. He wants it tonight. Damian looked toward the clock above the bar. Then he should have called earlier. Raphael's smile disappeared. The two men behind him spread apart. Evie saw one of them reach beneath his coat. Damian's right hand moved toward the inside of his jacket. Everything happened at once. Raphael drew a pistol. Damian caught Evie by the back of the neck and forced her behind the bar. The first gunshot exploded through the room. Glass shattered above her. Evie hit the floor on both knees. Pain flashed through her legs. Bourbon spilled across the counter and poured over the edge, soaking her sleeve. Another shot cracked through the bar, then another. Someone screamed. A bottle burst against the wall, raining glass over her hair. Evie pressed one hand over her mouth. The air smelled of liquor dust and something metallic. Blood. She saw Grant's face in her mind. Grant, who hated driving in snow. Grant, who became nervous when a waiter forgot his reservation. Grant, who had always seemed safe. A bullet struck the wood above Evie's head. The thought vanished. The shooting stopped. For several seconds she could hear only the ringing inside her ears. A shadow moved above her. Damian crouched behind the bar. A thin line of blood crossed his forehead. His gun remained in his hand. "Are you hit?" Evie stared at him. "I do not know. Look at me." She did. His voice was quiet, controlled. "Can you breathe?" "Yes. Can you move your hands?" She opened and closed her fingers. "Yes." "Then stand." He caught her wrist and pulled her upright. The bar looked as though a storm had torn through it. Raphael lay near the entrance, clutching his shoulder. One of the other men was on the floor beside an overturned table. The third had escaped through the open door. The card players were gone. The woman in red had vanished. Damian checked the room. Sirens sounded faintly in the distance. Evie looked at the wounded men. "You shot them." "They shot first." "That does not make this normal." "I did not say it was normal." She stepped back from him. "I am calling the police. The police know this bar." "Good. They know me too. That is not comforting. It was not intended to be." Damian moved toward the front door, then stopped. One of the torn wedding card pieces lay near Raphael's hand. Evelyn Parker. The gold lettering was darkened by spilled whiskey. Raphael looked at it. Then he looked at Evie. Damian saw the exchange. His expression changed. Not panic. Something colder. He crossed the room, took Evie by the elbow, and pulled her toward the back. "We are leaving. I am not going anywhere with you. Moretti's man saw your face and read your name. I have nothing to do with this. That stopped mattering when you sat beside me." They entered a narrow hallway behind the bar. Evie pulled against his grip. "Let go." Damian released her immediately. The sudden freedom unsettled her more than force would have. He opened a metal door. Freezing rain struck them. A black SUV waited in the alley with its engine running. Damian faced her. "Vincent Moretti sent those men for me. One escaped. He will report that you were sitting beside me and that I protected you. You protected everyone in the bar. He did not see everyone leave with me. I am not leaving with you." Sirens grew louder. Damian stepped closer, though he did not touch her. "If Moretti believes you matter, he will use you to learn whether he is right." Rain ran down Evie's face. "What does that mean?" "It means he will take you somewhere quiet and discover how much pain I am willing to prevent." Her stomach turned. "I met you less than an hour ago. Moretti does not need the truth. He only needs a theory." The rear door of the SUV opened. A man inside moved aside. Damien waited. Evie thought of the condo. Grant knew where she worked. Chloe knew every address connected to her life. Her mother would tell anyone anything if they sounded concerned enough. Evie climbed into the vehicle. Damien entered after her. The SUV pulled into the wet streets before the alley door had fully closed. Inside, the air smelled of leather and gunpowder. Evie fastened her seatbelt with shaking fingers. Damien took a phone from the man across from him and made one call. "Julian, Terminal 9. Bring the trust documents and the emergency filing packet." He listened. "No. We do not have until morning." Another pause. "I found someone." Evie looked at him. Damien ended the call. "Found someone?" He returned the phone. "My father died 3 months ago. His trust controls the freight terminals, the construction companies, and the voting rights attached to my family's holdings. What does that have to do with me?" "The final transfer happens tonight." Evie waited. Damien's jaw tightened. "My father placed a marriage clause in the trust." She stared at him. "You must be joking. I rarely joke in moving vehicles. You need to be married. By 3 in the morning. And Vincent Moretti knows." "Yes." The city moved beyond the tinted windows, all wet lights and blurred buildings. Evie laughed once. It sounded close to hysteria. "My fiancé cheated on me, men opened fire in a bar, and now a crime lord needs a wife before breakfast." Damien watched her carefully. "That is an accurate summary. You said I could change the groom." "I did." "You were serious?" "Yes." The SUV turned toward the industrial riverfront. Warehouses rose beyond chain fences. Freight cranes stood against the sky like enormous black skeletons. Evie looked at her bare finger. "What do you get control of the trust? Protection for my people, the ability to stop Moretti from dividing everything my father left behind. And what do I get? My name." She looked at him sharply. Damien continued. "Moretti will not touch my wife without starting a war he cannot afford. Your family will be guarded. Your identity will be protected. When the trust is secure, you can leave. You make marriage sound like a security contract. For tonight, it is." The SUV entered a freight terminal through a steel gate. Armed men watched from beneath warehouse lights. Damien stepped out first. Evie remained seated for one extra breath. Then she followed him inside. A nervous man in a gray suit waited beside a steel desk covered with legal documents. His glasses had slipped down his nose. A leather case sat open beside him. When he saw Evie, his face lost color. "Damien, you brought a civilian." "She has a name," Evie said. The man swallowed. "Julian Hale. Evie Parker." Julian looked toward Damien. "Does she understand?" "No," Evie said. "She does not." Damien stood across the desk from her. Rain tapped against the broken warehouse windows. "You can refuse," he said. "If you do, I will place you under protection and find another solution." Julian made a strangled sound. "There is no other solution before 3. Damien did not look away from Evie. "There is always another solution." She studied him. For the first time that night, nobody was begging her to fix something while pretending she had no choice. Damien needed her. He was also giving her the power to leave. Evie looked down at the marriage license. "I have conditions." Julian closed his eyes. Damien said, "Name them." "I keep my career." "Agreed. I get my own attorney." "Agreed. You do not control my money." "Agreed. My family is not used without my permission." Damien paused. "If protecting them requires immediate action, I act. Protection is not permission to control them." His eyes held hers. "Agreed." Evie placed both hands on the steel desk. "One more." The warehouse seemed to grow quieter. "I am not your property." Damien stepped into the circle of light. "You will carry my name. People will assume that means ownership. Will you know? Say it clearly." His voice lowered. "You are not mine to own." Julian pushed a pen toward her. Outside, an engine roared near the gate. Men shouted. Damien's hand moved toward the gun beneath his coat. Evie picked up the pen. 8 hours earlier, she had believed her future depended on a man choosing her. Now the most dangerous man in Chicago stood waiting for her decision. She signed her name. Damien took the pen and wrote his beneath it. Julian gathered the documents with trembling hands. "I need to file this now." A gunshot sounded outside the terminal. Evie turned toward the doors. Damien moved in front of her. Not touching. Shielding. Julian lifted his phone. "The officiant is connected." A woman's voice came through the speaker, formal and hurried. She verified their names. She asked whether both parties consented freely. Damien answered first. "I do." Evie looked at the blood drying near his eyebrow, the armed men at the doors, and the gold lettering of her old future still trapped somewhere inside a ruined bar. "Yes," she said. Her voice did not shake. "I do." Julian pressed the final submission key. For one long second, nothing happened. Then his screen changed. His shoulders dropped. Recorded at 2:26. Damien Cross had control of his empire. Evelyn Parker had become his wife. The room tilted. Evie reached for the edge of the desk and missed. Damien caught her before she struck the concrete. His arm closed around her waist as the warehouse lights blurred above them. "Evie." She tried to answer. The last thing she felt was the steady pressure of his hand at her back. Then the entire night folded into darkness. When Evie opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed was the silence. It was not the silence of the condo where pipes knocked behind the walls and traffic sighed beneath the windows. This silence had weight. It belonged to thick stone, expensive glass, and rooms built far enough from the street that the city could not enter without permission. Morning light pressed through charcoal curtains. Evie lay beneath white sheets in a bed large enough to make her feel misplaced. Her head throbbed. Her mouth tasted of bourbon rain and fear. For several seconds she stared at the ceiling and tried to understand why she was wearing a soft gray shirt instead of her cream blouse. Then the night returned. The Iron Chapel. Gunfire. The freight terminal. Damien Cross standing across a steel desk while she signed her name beside his. Evie sat upright too quickly. The room swayed. She caught the edge of the mattress and waited for the floor to stop moving. Her left hand rested on the sheets. A plain gold band circled her finger. The sight of it sent a cold wave through her stomach. There had been another ring there yesterday morning. A modest diamond selected by Grant and his mother. Evie remembered placing it on top of the wedding card bearing his name. Now she wore a ring chosen by people she had never met inside the home of a man she had known for less than a night. A quiet knock sounded at the door. Evie pulled the sheet higher. "Come in." The door opened. Damien entered carrying a black coffee cup. He had changed since the warehouse. Dark trousers, charcoal shirt with the sleeves folded to his forearms. No jacket, no visible gun. The absence of a weapon did nothing to make him look safer. The cut above his eyebrow had been cleaned. A narrow strip of black tape covered part of it. There was dried blood beneath one knuckle. He stopped several feet from the bed. "How do you feel?" "Like someone replaced my brain with broken glass." "That will pass." "You sound certain. A doctor examined you." Evie went still. "When 3 hours ago, I was unconscious." "Yes." "And you allowed a stranger to examine me, a female physician. My housekeeper remained in the room." Evie looked down at the shirt covering her body. Who changed my clothes, Mrs. Alvarez? You have a housekeeper named Mrs. Alvarez. She has worked for my family for 20 years. Did anything else happen? Damien's expression remained unreadable. No. She watched him. You answered that quickly. I assumed you would ask. Heat rose into Evie's face despite the cold room. Damien crossed to the bedside table and placed the coffee within reach. You were dehydrated. You had not eaten. You drank enough bourbon to make several poor decisions. I made only one poor decision. His eyes moved to the wedding band. That remains to be determined. Evie picked up the coffee. It was black and strong. She took one sip and felt the heat travel through her chest. Where am I? My house. That explains nothing. Gold Coast. Evie glanced toward the curtains. She had passed the old mansions along the lake 100 times and wondered who lived behind the gates. Now she was apparently married to one of them. How long was I unconscious? 7 hours. Her hand tightened around the cup. My phone. Damien removed it from his pocket and placed it on the bed. The screen lit beneath her fingers. 58 missed calls. Grant, Chloe, Linda, Mason from the agency, Grant again. There were 12 voice messages and more than 30 texts. Evie did not open any of them. A news alert appeared at the top of the screen. Chicago freight executive Damien Cross marries advertising strategist in private ceremony. Her own face appeared beneath the headline. The photograph had been taken from her agency website. Evie tapped the article. A local society reporter had written that Damien Cross, one of Chicago's most private business figures, had married Evelyn Parker shortly before dawn in a confidential civil ceremony. The article mentioned her job, her age, and the neighborhood where she lived. It also mentioned that she had been engaged to Grant Holloway. Evie read the sentence twice. How do they know someone at the county office sold the filing? She looked up. You say that like it happens every day. It does. My mother reads this site. Then she knows. That is not the problem. What is the problem? Evie threw back the sheets and stood. The room tipped sideways. Damien moved forward, but she caught the bedpost before he reached her. I am fine. You fainted on concrete 7 hours ago. I said I am fine. You are not. The certainty in his voice angered her because it sounded too close to concern. Evie looked down at the gray shirt. I need my clothes. They are being cleaned. I need something else. Mrs. Alvarez left clothing in the bathroom. Evie stared at him. How does she know my size? I pay people to know useful things. That is deeply unsettling. It is efficient. I am beginning to dislike that word. Damien leaned against the wall near the door. You should eat before we discuss anything important. I already signed a marriage license with a man who shot 3 people in front of me. I think we passed important. 2 people. What I shot too. The 3rd man was wounded by Raphael when he fired through the doorway. Evie closed her eyes. I do not know why that distinction makes this worse. Accuracy usually does. She walked toward the bathroom, then stopped. My things are still at the condo. I know. My passport, my work laptop, my grandmother's necklace. I will send men. No. Damien's jaw shifted slightly. Evie. No. I am going back. Moretti knows your address. So does every delivery driver who has brought Grant dinner. This is not the same. No, it is worse. Which is why I am not letting strangers pack my life while Grant and Chloe stand there deciding which version of the story makes them look least guilty. My men do not care about their story. I care about my belongings. I can replace anything in that apartment. Evie looked at him. The words landed harder than he intended. My life is not a list of objects you can purchase again. Damien became still. She continued before he could answer. That blue mug on my desk came from my first promotion. My grandmother wore that necklace when she crossed the country alone at 19. My laptop contains 6 years of work. Those things do not become replaceable because you have money. For the first time since he entered, Damien looked away. 30 minutes, he said. Evie folded her arms. For what? To shower and eat. You are agreeing I am preventing you from leaving barefoot. He turned toward the door. Damien. He paused. I decide what comes with me. His gaze returned to her. Yes. The bathroom looked like a hotel designed for people who never checked prices. Black marble covered the walls. Brass fixtures gleamed beneath soft lights. 2 shower heads released water hot enough to turn Evie's skin pink. She stood beneath the spray and watched the remains of the night disappear down the drain. Rainwater, bourbon, dust, a faint streak of blood she found near her wrist. Not hers. She scrubbed her skin until it hurt. The smell of the iron chapel faded, but the memory remained. Grant's mouth against Chloe's. The sound of a gunshot inside a closed room. Damien's hand at the back of her neck pushing her below the counter, his voice telling her to look at him. You are alive. Evie pressed both hands against the marble wall. Yesterday morning her life had been crowded with plans. Now every plan had been torn away, leaving nothing but decisions. When she stepped out, clothing waited on the vanity. Dark jeans, a cream blouse, black flats. Everything fit. That disturbed her almost as much as the men with guns. Downstairs, the house opened into rooms of dark wood, old stone, and quiet wealth. Nothing was bright. Nothing was soft, except the light entering through tall windows overlooking a private courtyard. Live oaks would not survive Chicago winters, so the garden held bare maple trees and black iron benches dusted with snow. A narrow fountain had frozen into clear glass. 2 men in dark suits stood near the kitchen entrance. They straightened when Evie entered. Neither spoke. Damien sat at a long island reading from a tablet. A plate of toast and eggs waited across from him. He looked up once. Eat. Good morning to you too. It is almost 11. Evie sat but did not touch the food. Damien slid the tablet toward her. The article remained open on the screen. Her name appeared beside his. Evelyn Parker Cross. She stared at it. Is that legally my name only if you choose to use it? The article chose for me. The article also called me a philanthropist. Are you no? Despite herself, Evie smiled. It vanished when she noticed the wrapped knuckles on his right hand. What happened? An employee gave the wrong answer. That sounds vague. It is intended to. She pushed the tablet away. I have a meeting with my supervisor at 1. Cancel it. No. Damien lifted his eyes. You were shot at last night. I was not hit. You became the legal spouse of a man Vincent Moretti once removed. And I told you I'd keep my career. You said many things while exhausted and intoxicated. You agreed while sober. One of the men near the door shifted his weight. Damien looked toward him. The man became motionless. Evie picked up a piece of toast. I need my laptop before 1. Damien studied her for several seconds. Then he stood. We leave in 10 minutes. 2 black vehicles waited outside the townhouse. Snow clouds hung low over the city. Freezing rain had stopped leaving the streets polished and dark. Evie sat beside Damien in the rear of the first SUV. Another vehicle followed. She watched the lake disappear behind buildings as they moved south. Damien read messages on his phone. You always travel like this? Yes. With armed men? Yes. Do they ever wear anything besides black? No. Evie looked toward the driver. The man kept his eyes on the road. Does anyone around you speak in complete sentences when necessary? She turned back toward the window. The gold band felt strange against her skin. Damien noticed her twisting it. You can remove it? Evie stopped. Julian said it made the filing look legitimate. The filing is complete. Then why are you wearing yours? Damien's hand rested on his thigh. A plain gold ring circled his finger. Because Moretti will look for weakness. So this is strategy. For now. The answer should have relieved her. It did not. When they reached River North, two men already stood near the entrance of the condominium building. They looked like businessmen waiting for a car, but their eyes moved constantly across windows, traffic, and reflections. The doorman opened the glass door. His gaze fell to Evie's wedding ring, then moved toward Damien. Recognition drained the color from his face. Miss Parker. Good morning, Daniel. He swallowed. Congratulations. The word sounded frightened. Evie entered the elevator. Damien followed. Two of his men remained in the lobby. Two more entered behind them. The enclosed space became smaller. Evie looked at Damien. I do not need an army to collect a laptop. You do not know what you need. That sentence sounds dangerously close to something my mother would say. His expression tightened. The elevator doors opened on the 12th floor. Grant was waiting outside the condo. He wore the same trousers from the day before and a wrinkled white shirt. His hair stood at odd angles. His eyes were red. For 1 second, relief crossed his face. Evie. He moved toward her. Then he saw Damien. Grant stopped. The hallway fell silent. Who is this? Evie reached for her key. Damien answered before she could. Her husband. The word moved through the corridor like smoke. Grant laughed once. No, nobody joined him. He looked at Evie's hand. His face changed. This is not real. Evie unlocked the door. It was filed at 2:26 this morning. You married someone hours after leaving me. You slept with my sister hours before I married him. Grant followed her inside. That is not the same. Evie turned. No, one required consent. Behind Grant, Chloe appeared near the dining room. She wore one of his college sweatshirts. Her blonde hair was tied back. Her face was pale and swollen from crying. The ivory robe Evie had seen the night before was draped over a chair. Chloe looked at Damien, then at the men entering behind him. Fear replaced grief. Evie, what is happening? I am taking my things. Grant stepped in front of the hallway. You cannot bring strangers into my home. Evie looked around the room. The candles she selected, the shelves she installed, the mural she painted. My name is on the lease. You left. I survived a difficult evening. Damien spoke to his men. Work equipment, identification documents, jewelry, clothing, personal items only. Carefully. The men moved past Grant. He turned toward Damien. You do not give orders here. Damien met his eyes. Grant stepped aside without being touched. Evie walked to the small office near the bedroom. Her laptop sat on the desk. Beside it rested the blue ceramic mug she had bought after her first promotion. She placed the charger inside the mug and carried both to an open box. Her noise-canceling headphones followed. Then client folders, a framed certificate, a notebook filled with campaign ideas, objects Grant had passed every day without knowing why they mattered. Chloe stood in the doorway. Can we talk now? Please. Evie continued packing. I did not plan it. That makes it better. No. I know it was wrong. You knew it was wrong before I walked in. Chloe lowered her eyes. I was jealous. Evie stopped. The admission was quieter than the excuses from the night before. Chloe rubbed her hands against the sleeves of Grant's sweatshirt. You always know what you are doing. Everyone trusts you. Mom calls you first. People listen when you speak. I feel like I disappear beside you. Evie turned slowly. So you wanted my fiancé. I wanted someone to choose me. You wanted to be chosen so badly that you became someone nobody can trust. Chloe flinched. Grant entered the room. Do not speak to her like that. Evie looked at him. You are still protecting her. She is taking responsibility. No, she is describing the wound after she used it as a weapon. Grant's face hardened. You disappeared and married a criminal. You do not get to act morally superior. Damien appeared behind him. The room changed. Grant felt it too. He turned. Damien's voice was quiet. You should be careful with accusations you cannot prove. Grant tried to hold his gaze. You think I am afraid of you? Yes. The answer came without anger. Grant looked away first. Evie entered the bedroom. Her grandmother's silver necklace lay in a dish near the mirror. She closed her fingers around it. For the first time since arriving, her breathing eased. She placed the necklace in her purse. A framed photograph sat beside the jewelry dish. Evie and Chloe at 17 standing on a beach in Michigan. Their hair covered their faces. Both were laughing so hard they leaned against each other to remain upright. Evie had forgotten the photograph existed. She picked it up. Chloe appeared in the mirror behind her. I am still your sister. Evie stared at the girls in the frame. The glass blurred. She blinked, but the tear escaped anyway. It ran down her cheek before she could stop it. Her fingers loosened. The frame fell. Glass shattered across the hardwood. Chloe gasped. Grant said Evie's name from the doorway. Evie looked down at the broken photograph. Pain opened inside her with such force that she could not breathe. Not for Grant. For the girl beside her on the beach. For every night Chloe had crawled into her bed during storms. For the birthday cakes Evie made when their mother worked late. For the sister who had once known all her secrets and had later used that closeness to find the weakest place to cut. Damien crossed the room. He crouched among the glass without hesitation. One of the shards sliced through the fabric at his knee. He lifted the photograph by its corner and brushed fragments from the surface with his thumb. Then he stood and handed it to Evie. His voice was low. Leave the glass. She looked at him. Damien glanced toward Grant and Chloe. Let them clean something for once. Evie took the photograph. The pain did not disappear. It changed shape. 20 minutes later, 4 boxes stood near the front door. Grant watched Damien's men carry them into the hallway. Evie placed her keys on the kitchen island. The wedding cards were still there. Most remained inside the boxes. A few had fallen onto the floor. Grant picked up the engagement ring from the counter. He held it in his palm. I love you. Evie looked at him. Once those words could have pulled her across any distance. Now they barely crossed the room. No, she said. You loved being forgiven. Grant's eyes filled. It was one mistake. It was a choice you made because you believed I would repair it. I would do anything to take it back. You cannot take back something you still do not understand. Chloe began crying again. Evie did not comfort her. She opened the door. Damien waited in the hallway. He did not offer his hand. He simply stood beside her as she walked away. Inside the elevator, Evie held the broken photograph against her chest. Damien looked at the cut near his knee. You are bleeding. It is nothing. That is my line. His eyes moved toward her. Evie looked down at the photograph. Thank you. For what? Not telling me to forgive her. I would not insult you. The elevator descended. For several floors, neither spoke. Back at the townhouse, Evie carried her laptop into Damien's study. The room faced the courtyard through tall windows. Dark walnut shelves covered the walls. Old books stood in perfect rows. A massive desk occupied the center, its surface almost empty. Damien remained near the doorway. You can work here. Thank you for the permission. I am trying not to place you in a locked room. How generous. His jaw tightened. Evie opened her laptop. I have a meeting in 12 minutes. Who knows your location? No one. Keep it that way. She looked up. You agreed not to control my work. I am controlling who can locate you. That sounds like the same thing with better tailoring. Damien stepped closer to the desk. Moretti's men saw you in the bar. The marriage filing named you publicly. Until I understand his response, you do not leave this house without security. You are confusing protection with control. Protection feels like control when the danger is real. Then tell me the danger. Do not simply issue orders. Their eyes held. Something moved behind Damien's expression. Not anger. Recognition. I will be nearby, he said. That is not an answer. It is the one I have. He left. At 1 o'clock, Mason Reed appeared on Evie's screen. 3 co-workers sat inside the agency conference room. Their faces were arranged into careful expressions of concern and curiosity. Mason leaned toward the camera. Evie, are you all right? I am fine. Your background looks different. Plumbing problem at the condo. One co-worker coughed to hide a smile. Mason adjusted his glasses. Grant called reception this morning. Evie's fingers stopped above the keyboard. What did he say? That he needed to speak with you urgently. He does not. Mason waited, clearly hoping for more. Evie shared her screen. Can we discuss the client launch? The meeting began. Numbers replaced questions. Evie spoke about click-through rates, landing page behavior, and customer hesitation. Her voice became steady as the familiar structure took hold. Data did not cry. Data did not betray anyone. Data did not ask to be forgiven. Halfway through the presentation, the study doors opened. Damien entered without knocking. Blood marked the edge of his cuff. A bruise darkened his jaw. White tape wrapped 2 knuckles. He crossed toward a cabinet and poured whiskey into a glass. Mason leaned closer to the screen. Is someone there? Evie reached for the mute button. Damien looked toward the laptop. Finish soon. She muted the call. Do not speak while I am in a meeting. You are in my study. You are in my presentation. His eyes moved toward the screen, then back to her. You are really doing this. Doing what? Discussing advertisements while my men remove a tracking device from a freight crate downstairs. Yes. Damien stared at her. Why? Because, unlike some people, I understand brand continuity. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It was brief and dangerous. Evie noticed it anyway. Dinner is at 7, he said. With whom? Vincent Moretti. The small sense of normality disappeared. He wants to meet me. He wants to determine whether you are real. Evie looked at the ring on her finger. I am sitting here. He does not care whether you exist. He cares whether you matter. Damien turned toward the door. Evie stopped him. What happened to your face? He touched the bruise near his jaw. Someone resisted a conversation. Did you win? I am here. He left. Evie unmuted the call. Mason was staring at her. Everything okay? She smiled with every ounce of professional calm she had left. Absolutely. As I was saying, the problem is not awareness. The problem is trust. At 6:30, Evie stood before a mirror in a bedroom that still did not feel like hers. A black dress waited on the bed. The silk was simple and close to the body, elegant without softness. Beside it sat a velvet box. Inside was a diamond ring large enough to make the plain gold band look almost invisible. Evie heard the door open behind her. Damien appeared in the mirror. He wore a black suit with no tie. The bruise along his jaw had deepened. Evie lifted the diamond. Subtle. Moretti understands symbols. This could pay for an apartment. It could pay for several. That does not make it less ridiculous. Damien stepped closer. May I? The question surprised her. She nodded. He took the ring and slid it onto her finger beside the wedding band. His touch was careful. The diamond caught the light. For 1 second, their hands remained together. "You look like you belong to another life," Damien said. Evie met his gaze in the mirror. "Is that a compliment? An observation?" "Try harder." His eyes lowered briefly to the dress, then returned to her face. "You look like trouble. I should have recognized sooner." The words changed the air between them. Evie turned away first. The restaurant occupied the basement of an old hotel near the river. There was no sign outside. A private elevator opened into a dining room lined with dark brick and velvet curtains. 4 of Damien's men stood near the exits. 3 men loyal to Moretti waited across the room. Vincent Moretti entered 10 minutes late. He was older than Evie expected. Silver hair, navy suit, a gold ring on his smallest finger. He moved with the patience of a man accustomed to making other people wait. Damien. Vincent. Moretti looked at Evie. His smile did not reach his eyes. "And this is the bride." Evie lifted her glass. Evelyn Cross. The name felt strange in her mouth. Moretti sat across from them. "A remarkable transformation. Yesterday you were planning a society wedding. Today you are married into one of Chicago's oldest families. I had a productive evening." Moretti laughed softly. A waiter poured wine and disappeared. "Did he pay you?" Evie looked at the glass. "Not enough to tolerate this wine." One of Damien's men shifted near the wall. Moretti's smile became thinner. "Does she always answer for herself?" Damien leaned back in his chair. "She does now." Moretti studied Evie. "You understand that this marriage places you inside a conflict that existed before you knew Damien's name? I understood men were shooting before anyone explained the paperwork. And yet you signed." "Yes." Why Evie felt Damien's attention beside her. She could have mentioned protection. She could have mentioned Grant. Instead, she said, "Because I was tired of letting frightened people decide what happened to me." Moretti turned his ring against the stem of his wine glass. "Your fiancé is frightened." Evie's body became still. "Your sister is worse. Your mother has called several reporters trying to locate you." Damien's hand rested near the inside of his jacket. Moretti noticed. His smile returned. "Family is such useful leverage." Evie placed her glass down. "You think they are leverage? Everyone is." "No. Some people are ghosts." Moretti tilted his head. "They can frighten you for years," Evie continued, "until you realize they no longer have a body." The room went quiet. Moretti looked at Damien. "You married a sharp woman." Damien's eyes remained on him. "I noticed." Dinner ended without agreement. Outside, snow began falling again. Inside the SUV, Evie stared through the window as the restaurant disappeared behind them. Damien sat beside her. "You handled him well." "You used me." "Yes." The honesty turned her toward him. "You could pretend to feel guilty. I would not insult you with a lie. You brought me there so Moretti could see the marriage as real. You came because you refused to remain hidden. Both can be true." "Yes." Evie looked at the city lights passing across his face. "You used me to secure your empire. You used my name to prevent your old life from defining you." Her anger sharpened. "At least we understand each other." Damien's gaze dropped to her mouth. The silence changed. Evie felt it before he moved. His hand rose slowly and stopped near her face. "Tell me to stop." She should have. Instead, she leaned forward. The kiss was not gentle. It held the anger from the condo, the fear from the bar, and every unspoken question from the warehouse. Damien's hand settled against her jaw, firm but waiting. He did not pull her closer until she chose the distance herself. Evie caught the front of his shirt. For one reckless moment, everything else disappeared. Then she pulled away. Their breathing filled the quiet vehicle. "This changes nothing," she said. Damien's thumb rested briefly beneath her chin. It changes one thing. What? Now we both know the lie is becoming inconvenient. His phone rang. The expression left his face before he answered. He listened without speaking. Then his eyes hardened. Where? Another pause. Seal the site. No one leaves. He ended the call. Evie moved back against her seat. What happened? One of my freight offices was attacked. Was anyone hurt? A manager is missing. What did they take? Nothing. Evie frowned. No money? No. No equipment? No. Files untouched. Damien looked toward the driver. Terminal office. Now. The vehicle changed direction. Evie reached for Damien's phone. He did not give it to her. Give. What are you doing? Trying to understand why someone would attack a freight office and take nothing. This does not concern you. It concerns me if Moretti did it because of the marriage. Damien's jaw tightened. Then he placed the phone in her hand. Photographs filled the screen. Broken locks, disabled cameras, desks overturned. A security panel ripped from the wall. Evie enlarged the image. Nothing appeared random. The attackers had moved through the building in a deliberate sequence. Security room, dispatch office, manager's desk, emergency exit. They were not searching for something, she said. Damien watched her. Evie studied the timestamps. The attack lasted 11 minutes. Police were called at minute 9. Damien's security team arrived at minute 14. The missing manager had activated 3 separate protocols before disappearing. Evie looked up. They were watching. Watching what? How quickly your people respond. Which doors lock first? Who receives the call? Which vehicle arrives? Which route your men use? The SUV turned toward the river. Damien's face became very still. Evie handed the phone back. They were not trying to damage you. What were they doing? They were learning how you react. Damien took the phone from Evie's hand, but his eyes remained on her. The SUV moved through the sleeping city tires, whispering over wet pavement. Beyond the windows, the Chicago River reflected broken lines of white and gold. Warehouses rose along the water like dark monuments, their windows empty, their loading bays locked. Damien studied the photographs again. You saw all of that from 4 images. I saw repetition. My security team saw vandalism. Because they were looking at the damage, I was looking at the decisions. The driver glanced at Damien through the mirror. Damien said nothing for several seconds. Then he lifted his phone. Call Marcus. Tell him not to move any additional teams. Lock the existing positions and preserve every communication record from the last 6 hours. He listened. No. No one changes routes until I arrive. He ended the call and looked at Evie. What else? She enlarged the photograph of the dispatch office. A chair had been overturned beside the emergency panel. The cabinet beneath it stood open. Nothing inside had been removed. They wanted the manager to trigger the emergency system. He did. How many protocols? 3. Then they measured 3 responses. Damien leaned back. You are certain? No. Certainty is dangerous when the evidence is incomplete. His gaze sharpened. Then why should I listen? Because the alternative is doing exactly what they expect. The SUV passed beneath a steel bridge. For one moment, darkness moved across Damien's face. Then he said, You are coming inside. Evie looked at him. I thought this did not concern me. It did not. And now I want to see what else you notice. The Cross Operations Center occupied a brick building between 2 freight yards near the river. From the outside, it looked like an old logistics office. Inside, it felt more like a military command post. Security doors opened one after another as Damien approached. Men stood from desks when he entered. Screens covered the far wall. They displayed loading schedules, freight routes, security feeds, and maps marked with colored lights. Radios murmured beneath the low conversation. Evie felt every eye turned toward her. Some recognized her from the news. Others looked at the diamond on her hand and understood enough. A broad man with gray at his temples approached Damien. "Marcus Bell," Damien said. "Head of security." Marcus nodded to Evie, though the movement held no warmth. "Mrs. Cross." "Evie." He looked toward Damien. "We found the manager's phone in an alley 2 blocks from the office. No blood. No body. Which means he may still be alive," Evie said. Marcus glanced at her. "It means we do not know." Damien removed his coat. "Show us everything." Marcus led them to the center table. 3 incident files waited beneath the hanging lights. Evie frowned. 3. Marcus opened the first folder. A warehouse alarm 4 nights ago. Nothing stolen. The second showed photographs of a delivery vehicle found abandoned near a rail yard. 2 nights ago, Marcus continued. The driver was released after 4 hours. He remembered very little. The third contained the images from the office attack. Evie spread the photographs across the table. Why were these treated separately? Marcus folded his arms. Because they happened at different locations and involved different crews. That does not mean they had different purposes. One of the men near the table spoke. We already investigated the first 2 incidents. He was younger than Marcus, with a heavy build and a scar near his left ear. Damien introduced him. Anthony Russo, Freight Security. Anthony looked at Evie as if she had walked into the wrong meeting. The warehouse alarm was a failed theft. The truck incident was a warning. Tonight was an escalation. Evie studied the reports. What was taken from the warehouse? Nothing. What was taken from the truck? Nothing. What was taken tonight? Anthony's jaw tightened. You made your point. No, I asked a question. Damien leaned against the edge of the table. Anthony answered. Nothing. Evie arranged the 3 files by date. They did not want your cargo. They wanted your attention. She pointed to the first report. The warehouse alarm forced your night supervisor to choose which team responded. Then the second. The missing truck forced you to reveal how quickly you could close a route and replace a driver. Then the third. The office attack exposed your dispatch chain, your emergency contacts, and the location of your backup teams. Marcus looked at the maps. They are building a response model. Evie nodded. They create a problem record, what you do, and use the information to make the next problem harder. Anthony gave a humorless laugh. This is not an advertising campaign. Evie turned toward him. No. But people are people, whether they are buying shoes or preparing an ambush. They reveal themselves through patterns. Anthony looked at Damien. You are giving her access to operational files because she studies customers. Damien's voice was quiet. I am giving her access because she noticed something all of you missed. The room went still. Anthony stepped back. Evie returned to the files. I need more data. Marcus asked, what kind route changes? Vendor complaints, insurance claims, security alerts, delivery delays, payroll changes. Anything unusual from the last 12 months? Anthony shook his head. That information is restricted. Evie met his stare. You can protect your pride or you can protect your people. Damien looked toward Marcus. Give her access. Marcus hesitated for only a second. Yes, sir. They worked through the night. Evie sat before 3 screens while Marcus opened record after record. Damien remained nearby, taking calls and issuing orders in a low voice. At first, the information appeared random. A damaged loading gate, a false fire alarm, a vendor who changed banking information without warning, a driver who called in sick minutes before an important delivery, a private security contractor who submitted duplicate invoices. Evie began creating categories: timing, location, response, authorization. She tracked who approved changes, which departments reacted, and how quickly information moved through the organization. At 3 a.m, Damien placed coffee beside her. Evie did not look away from the screen. "You are becoming predictable." "Because I brought coffee. Because you keep telling people what to do instead of asking what they see." Damien pulled a chair beside her. "What do you see?" She opened 6 vendor records. "These companies look unrelated." "They are." "No, they use the same invoice language." Damien leaned closer. Evie highlighted identical phrases. 4 companies misspell the same street name. 3 use the same unusual spacing in their account numbers. All 6 send revised documents within 20 minutes of route changes. Marcus came around the desk. "Shell companies." "Probably," Evie said. "They place small orders, create minor problems, and watch how your staff responds." Damien studied the names. "I know 2 of the owners. You know the names attached to the paperwork." "Whoever controls them has been inside our system for months," Marcus said. Evie opened the authorization history. Every route adjustment required approval from senior operations staff or legal counsel. Most approvals belonged to different managers. Several had one name in common: Julian Hale. Evie stopped moving. Damien saw the screen. His expression changed so slowly that another person might have missed it. Evie did not. "Damien." He stood. "Marcus, bring Julian here." Marcus reached for his phone. "Alive," Evie said. Every man near the table looked at her. Damien's eyes turned cold. "I did not say otherwise." "You did not need to." Julian arrived 40 minutes later. He entered the operations center wearing a long coat over his pajamas. His glasses were crooked. His hair was damp from snow. He looked confused until he saw the files on the table. Then the color left his face. Damien waited in a small concrete room behind the main floor. There was 1 table, 3 chairs, no windows. Julian sat across from him. Evie remained near the wall. Marcus closed the door. Damien placed the authorization records in front of Julian. "Explain." Julian adjusted his glasses. "I approve dozens of route documents every week. These changes occurred before every test Moretti's people conducted. I did not know they were tests." Damien leaned forward. "Try again." Julian's breathing changed. Evie watched his hands. He kept rubbing the side of his thumb against his index finger. Not anger. Fear. Damien noticed the movement too. Who did he threaten? Julian looked up. No one. Damien stood. The chair scraped across the concrete. Julian flinched before Damien touched him. Evie stepped forward. "He is already afraid." Damien did not look at her. He should be. Julian pressed both hands against the table. "I did not sell the organization." "Then why did you approve false vendors I was told which documents to clear?" "By Moretti." Julian closed his eyes. Damien reached inside his coat. Evie moved between them. "Stop!" Damien's voice dropped. "Move." "No." Marcus shifted near the door. Julian stared at Evie as if he could not understand why she was standing there. Damien's hand remained inside his coat. "He gave Moretti access to my routes. He was forced." "You do not know that. I know what panic looks like." Julian's shoulders collapsed. "My brother." Silence filled the room. Damien removed his hand from his coat, but his expression did not soften. "Where is Noah? I do not know." "How long?" 6 weeks. Julian's voice broke. "He left his apartment after work. Moretti's men sent me a photograph the next morning. They said Noah would stay alive if I approved certain documents." Damien looked at the files. "How much did you give them?" "Only small changes. Nothing that should have exposed lives. A manager is missing. I did not know they would take him. You chose your brother over my people." Julian's eyes filled. "Yes." Damien drew the gun. Evie placed her hand against his wrist. The room froze. Damien looked down at her fingers. "Evie, if you kill him, Moretti wins. He betrayed me. He proved that fear works." Damien's jaw tightened. He sold access because Moretti found the one person he could not sacrifice. That does not excuse it. No. It explains how the system failed. Julian covered his face. Evie looked at Damien. "You can punish him after Noah is safe. Right now he is still useful." Damien stared at her for a long moment. Then he removed the magazine from the pistol and placed both pieces on the table. Julian released a shaking breath. "One chance," Damien said. "You get one." They returned to the operations floor. Evie built the plan while Julian sat under guard. He would continue sending information to Moretti. The information would appear valuable enough to be believed. A false delivery schedule would move a high-value shipment through an abandoned rail warehouse on the south side. Moretti's men would prepare an ambush there. While they gathered, Damien's teams would search the locations connected to the shell companies. Marcus studied the map. There are 11 possible sites. "Too many," Damien said. Evie reviewed fuel records, food deliveries, and utility bills associated with each property. One warehouse purchased enough electricity to operate refrigeration equipment, but had no registered cold storage license. Another received weekly deliveries from a pharmacy supplier despite having no employees. Evie pointed to the second location. "Here." Anthony looked over her shoulder. "Why insulin?" He frowned. "The delivery records show refrigerated medical supplies. Julian said Noah is diabetic." Julian looked at her. "I never told you that. You requested emergency insulin during a business trip last year. The reimbursement is in the employee records." Damien studied the address. An old printing facility. Marcus called 2 teams. Julian sent the false route schedule. The trap began. Evie remained in the operations center while Damien prepared to leave. He checked his weapon near the doorway. "You stay here." "I know." The answer made him look at her. "No argument. I am more useful with the data." His gaze moved over her face. "If anything changes, you call me directly." "I will." Damien turned away. "Come back," Evie said. He stopped. The words had escaped before she decided to speak them. Damien looked over his shoulder. Something unguarded appeared in his eyes. Then it disappeared. "I intend to." The building holding Noah stood between 2 abandoned factories. Damien's team entered from the east. Evie followed their movements through security feeds, traffic cameras, and radio calls. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then Marcus reported that the ground floor was empty. Evie checked the utility map. The refrigeration system was still drawing power. "There is a basement," she said. Marcus answered through the radio. "No basement on the property plan. The plans are wrong. The electrical load drops below ground." Damien's voice came through the speaker. "Find an entrance." One of the cameras near the rear alley flickered. Evie enlarged the image. A delivery truck moved away from the building. Too slowly. Damien rear exit. They are moving him. Gunfire erupted through the radio. Evie gripped the desk. The rear camera went dark. Marcus shouted instructions. A second team blocked the alley. For several seconds, the only sound was broken communication and distant shots. Then Damien's voice returned. "We have Noah." Evie closed her eyes. The breath she released hurt. One cross guard had been wounded. 2 Moretti men were captured. Noah was alive, weak and frightened, but stable. When Damien returned before dawn, dried blood covered the sleeve of his coat. Evie stood from the desk. "Is it yours, No?" She searched his face anyway. Damien came closer. "You were right about the basement. You were right to listen." A faint smile touched his mouth. "Do not become unbearable." Too late. Julian reunited with Noah in a private medical room. He fell to his knees beside the bed and pressed his forehead against his brother's hand. Damien watched from the doorway. His face revealed nothing. Evie stood beside him. "You are still angry." "Yes. You kept him alive. For now." She looked at him. That was restraint. That was strategy. Both can be true. Over the next 2 weeks, the balance of power began to change. Evie mapped the 6 shell companies and found 9 more connected through shared accountants, copied contracts, and repeated billing patterns. Moretti had extended himself across too many businesses. He depended on secrecy. Evie turned his secrecy into a map. Damien used the information carefully. He did not attack every location. He showed selected evidence to neutral partners, union leaders, and board members who had begun doubting the cross-organization. Moretti's allies saw that he had used their businesses without permission. His captains learned that he had treated their men as disposable tools. Support moved away from him quietly. No headlines appeared. No public arrests were made. In Damien's world, power rarely collapsed with an explosion. It disappeared one phone call at a time. The cross-board met on a gray Thursday morning. 12 men sat around a long walnut table. Evie entered beside Damien. Conversation stopped. An older board member named Samuel Pierce looked at the chair beside Damien. "That seat belongs to senior leadership." Evie placed a folder in front of him. "Then senior leadership should have noticed 17 shell companies inside its own vendor network." Samuel did not touch the file. "Marriage does not give you authority here." Evie met his eyes. "No. Preventing you from sending armed teams into a coordinated ambush gives me authority." Several men looked down. Damien pulled out the chair beside his. "Sit." Evie remained standing. "Are you asking?" The room became painfully still. Damien held her gaze. "Yes." She sat. For the first time since entering his world, the men at the table did not look at Evie as Damien's temporary wife. They looked at her as the person who had found the trap. That night, snow fell beyond the windows of Damien's study. Evie stood near the fire reading the final report. Damien poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to her. She accepted it, but did not drink. "My father used to sit in that chair," Damien said. Evie looked toward the leather chair behind the desk. "He believed loyalty was something you forced from people. Did it work until they found a way to leave?" Damien looked toward a portrait hanging above the bookshelves. His father had the same dark eyes and none of the restraint. "My mother left when I was 12. My father never forgave her. The marriage clause was his final joke. He made sure you could not inherit without recreating the thing he lost." "Yes." Evie turned the glass in her hand. "My family used a different method." "What method?" "They called me strong whenever they needed me to accept more pain." Damien looked at her. "Grant loved what you carried. He loved that he never had to carry it. And your sister, she wanted proof that she could take something from me." Damien stepped closer. "What do you want?" The question felt more dangerous than the gunfire. Evie looked at the man she had married in a freight terminal. "I want to stop confusing usefulness with love." Damien removed the pistol from beneath his jacket. He placed it on the desk. Then he stood in front of her with empty hands. "Tell me to leave." Evie set down her glass. "No." He touched her face slowly, giving her time to move. She did not. When he kissed her, there was no anger this time. No enemy watching. No contract waiting to be signed. Evie chose every step toward him. Later, she locked the bedroom door herself. Damien watched from beside the bed. "You know the lock will not keep my men out. It is not for your men." He understood. The lock was not protection. It was choice. 2 weeks later, the Cross Trust was fully secured. Vincent Moretti requested a temporary truce. Julian returned to work under strict supervision. Noah recovered in a private hospital. The missing freight manager was found alive near the state line. For the first time since the Iron Chapel, the city seemed to exhale. Evie entered Damien's study expecting another operations meeting. No exhale. Evie entered Damien's study expecting another operations meeting. No maps covered the desk. No weapons rested near the files. Only a thin stack of legal documents waited beneath the lamp. Beside them lay a bank check, $5 million. Evie read the first line, petition for annulment. The room became cold. Damien stood at the window with his back to her. "The trust is secure," he said. Evie looked at the check again. "What is this?" "The agreement we made." "You made this agreement. You signed knowing the marriage could end. That is not what I asked." Damien turned. His face was controlled, but his hands were closed at his sides. "You fulfilled your part. Moretti cannot challenge the transfer. Your security will continue until the threat is gone. The money is compensation." Compensation. It gives you complete independence. Evie touched the edge of the papers. "And now you are dismissing me." "No. That is what this looks like. I am giving you the freedom I promised." Evie lifted her eyes. "Did you ever consider asking what I wanted Damien's silence answered first?" Then he said, "You wanted the ability to leave. I wanted the ability to choose. These papers give you that." "No. These papers are another decision you made alone." Damien looked at the annulment petition between them. For the first time since Evie met him, the most feared man in Chicago appeared uncertain. She left the study without signing. The door closed behind her with a quiet click, but the sound followed Evie through the hallway like something breaking. No guard stopped her. No one asked where she was going. That should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt as though Damien had already begun removing her from his life. Evie entered the bedroom and stood before the open wardrobe. Her clothes now occupied one side. His remained on the other. Black shirts, dark suits, coats heavy enough for Chicago winters, 2 lives arranged beside each other. Temporary, apparently. She pulled a small suitcase from the closet and placed it on the bed. For several seconds she did nothing. Then she began packing. Not because she had decided to leave, because she needed to know she still could. A knock sounded at the door. Mrs. Alvarez entered carrying folded towels. Her silver hair was pinned neatly at the back of her head. She looked at the suitcase, then at Evie. Mr. Cross said nothing. "That sounds like him." Mrs. Alvarez placed the towels on a chair. "He has spent his life believing that letting someone go is kinder than asking them to stay." Evie looked up. "Did he ask you to tell me that no? He would dismiss me if he knew?" Despite herself, Evie almost smiled. Mrs. Alvarez crossed the room and adjusted the corner of a blanket that did not need adjusting. His mother left this house when he was a boy. His father told him that love always becomes a weakness someone else can use. Damien does not seem weak. "No," Mrs. Alvarez said. "He seems lonely." Evie folded a blouse and placed it inside the suitcase. "He made the decision for me." "Yes." "He decided I would be safer somewhere else." "Yes." He put a price beside the papers. Mrs. Alvarez's expression sharpened. "That was foolish. $5 million of foolishness. Money is the only language he trusts when he cannot say what he feels." Evie closed the suitcase halfway. "I cannot teach a grown man how to ask me to stay." "No." Mrs. Alvarez moved toward the door. "But you can decide whether he is worth forcing to learn." When she was gone, Evie sat on the edge of the bed. Her phone rested beside her. There were no messages from Damien. There was one from Linda. Please, come home. We need to talk. Evie stared at the words. Home. She no longer knew which building deserved that name. An hour later, a black sedan carried her toward the suburbs. Damien had not ordered the car. Evie had. That distinction mattered. Snow lined the roads beyond the city. Bare trees stood behind rows of quiet houses. Christmas decorations remained on several porches, though the holiday had passed. Linda's home looked exactly as Evie remembered. White siding, blue shutters, a brass wreath hook still attached to the front door. Grant's car was parked near the curb. Evie remained inside the sedan for one breath longer than necessary. Then she stepped out. Linda opened the door before she reached it. Her mother looked older than she had 3 weeks earlier. Her hair was tied loosely. The skin beneath her eyes had darkened. Evie. Linda moved forward as if to embrace her. Evie did not step closer. Her mother stopped. They are in the living room. Grant stood near the fireplace. Chloe sat on the sofa with her hands folded tightly in her lap. Neither looked like the people Evie had left in the condo. Grant had lost weight. His expensive sweater hung loosely at the shoulders. Chloe wore no makeup. Her hair was pulled into a simple knot. Evie removed her coat. No one spoke. She chose the chair across from them. Linda remained standing. I asked everyone here because we cannot continue like this. Evie looked at her. Like what separated. Angry. Afraid to speak. I am not afraid to speak. Grant lowered his eyes. Linda sat beside Chloe. I know we failed you. The sentence was so unexpected that Evie almost looked away. Her mother continued. I kept thinking that if I calmed Chloe, then I could talk to you afterward. I have done that your entire life. Yes, I told myself you needed less because you were stronger. No. You gave me less because I complained less. Linda's mouth trembled. I thought I was helping both of you. You protected Chloe from consequences. Then you used me to absorb them. Chloe stared at her hands. Linda began to cry. Evie felt the old instinct rise. Cross the room. Comfort her. Make the pain easier. She remained seated. Grant cleared his throat. The affair did not begin that night. Evie turned toward him. He struggled to hold her gaze. It started about 6 weeks before you found us. The words should have hurt more than they did. Instead, they settled into an empty place. How many times Grant swallowed? 4. Chloe closed her eyes. Evie looked between them. In our condo, twice. In our bed, no. Grant answered quickly. Never there. As if one untouched room could preserve the dignity of the entire home. Evie leaned back. Why Grant rubbed both hands together. I felt invisible. A bitter laugh escaped her. You felt invisible. You were always working, planning, fixing things. You never needed me. I asked you to help. You asked me to complete tasks, because you never saw them until I pointed at them. Grant's face tightened. You made me feel incompetent. No, I stopped hiding how much of your life I was carrying. He looked toward the floor. With Chloe, I felt needed. Evie glanced at her sister. Chloe's eyes were wet. You punished me for not being weak enough, Evie said. Grant did not answer. Chloe spoke quietly. I did not love him. Grant looked at her. The statement struck him harder than anything Evie could have said. Chloe continued. I thought I did. Maybe I wanted to. But it was not about him. Evie watched her. What was it about Chloe took a shaking breath? You. Linda reached for her hand. Chloe pulled away. For once, let me say it. Her mother withdrew. Chloe looked at Evie. Everyone trusted you. Dad trusted you. Mom called you when something went wrong. Teachers remembered you. People at work respected you. Even when I walked into a room first, I felt like I was waiting for someone to ask where you were. Evie said nothing. I wanted something you valued to choose me instead. And when he did, Chloe's tears fell. I felt powerful for about 10 minutes. Evie looked toward Grant. He appeared smaller than before. Chloe pressed her palms against her knees. Then I hated myself. But not enough to stop. There it was. Not an excuse. Not a request for immediate forgiveness. The truth. It did not repair anything. It did not return the years. It did not rebuild trust. But it stood in the room without costume. Chloe asked, "Do you think you will ever forgive me?" Evie considered the question. "I may stop being angry one day." Hope entered Chloe's face too quickly. Evie continued, "That does not mean you return to the place where you hurt me." The hope disappeared. "You are still my sister," Chloe whispered. "Yes," Evie's voice remained steady. "And being my sister gave you access. It did not give you ownership." Linda wiped her face. "What can we do? Stop asking me to make this easier." Grant looked at the wedding ring on Evie's hand. "Do you love him?" The question entered the room like an accusation. Evie turned the ring once. "I do not know what love with Damien looks like yet." Grant's mouth tightened. "But I know what it never looked like with you." She stood. Linda rose too. "Are you leaving?" "Yes." "Will you come back?" Evie put on her coat. "When I choose to." Outside, the cold air cleared the last of the room from her lungs. The driver opened the rear door. Before Evie could enter, her phone rang. "Marcus Bell," she answered. "What happened?" His voice was controlled, but she heard the urgency beneath it. "Moretti called a meeting at the Lakeshore Club. Neutral board members are already arriving. Why, he claims the vendor evidence was manipulated." Evie's hand tightened around the phone. "He is attacking the analysis. He is attacking you. He says Damien married you to create a false witness and seize disputed freight contracts. Where is Damien?" "On his way there." Evie looked back at Linda's house. Grant stood behind the curtain. Chloe had not appeared. "Tell the driver the new address." The Lakeshore Club occupied the upper floor of a private building near the water. Evie entered through a marble lobby guarded by men pretending to be staff. The elevator opened into a room of dark windows and polished wood. Damien stood at one end of a long table. Moretti stood at the other. Between them sat 8 men who controlled shipping contracts, union votes, construction access, and enough political influence to make investigations disappear. Conversation stopped when Evie entered. Damien's eyes found her. Anger appeared first, then relief. He crossed the room. "You should not be here." Evie removed her coat. "You continue saying that in rooms where my name is being discussed." Moretti smiled. "Mrs. Cross. Mr. Moretti." Damien lowered his voice. "This is not safe." "Then tell me the danger." "Do not remove my choice." The word struck him. He stepped back. Moretti watched the exchange with interest. "Your wife seems unaware that this room is not an advertising office." Evie placed her laptop on the table. "She is aware that fraud still leaves patterns." One of the board members looked toward Moretti. "You said the evidence was manufactured. It was created by a woman with access to cross records and every reason to protect her husband." Evie opened the computer. "The original invoices came from your vendors. They are not my vendors." "No. They belong to men who believed they were your partners." She connected the screen to the room's display. Company names appeared. Payment dates, shared banking information, repeated contract language. Moretti remained calm. "Documents can be altered." Evie opened a second file. "These are authenticated bank transfers obtained from 3 separate accountants." A third screen appeared. "These are vehicle registrations tied to the same addresses." Then a fourth. These are payments made to the men who attacked the Iron Chapel." One of Moretti's captains shifted near the door. Moretti looked toward him. The man avoided his eyes. Evie continued, "You used small companies to study cross-operations. You created incidents to measure emergency responses. Then you sent your own people into situations where you knew they could be captured." Moretti smiled faintly. "You are telling a dramatic story." "No. I am showing frightened men that you consider them disposable." Silence spread through the room. A broad man seated near the center turned toward Moretti. "My nephew was at the rail warehouse." Moretti did not answer. "You said Cross had the shipment there. It was an operational failure." Evie closed the laptop halfway. "No, it was bait. You simply failed to tell your men they were the bait." The balance in the room changed, not loudly. A chair moved back. A man near the window stepped away from Moretti's side. Another folded his arms. Moretti's expression remained pleasant, but the skin near his eyes tightened. He looked at Damien. "You allow your wife to speak for you." Damien stood beside Evie. "No." His voice was calm. "I learned to listen when she speaks for herself." The words settled inside her. Not protection, not possession, recognition. The board members reviewed the evidence. Moretti could deny one company. He could not deny 17. He could dismiss one payment. He could not dismiss hundreds. By the end of the meeting, he agreed to relinquish the disputed freight contracts and surveillance against Cross properties and cease all action against Evie's family. The agreement did not destroy him. Men like Moretti were not destroyed in one room. But he left weaker than he entered. For now, that was enough. Damien and Evie rode back to the townhouse in silence. He did not ask why she had come. She did not mention the annulment papers. Snow began falling near midnight. When they entered the study, the documents remained beneath the lamp. The check waited beside them. Evie removed her coat and placed it over a chair. Damien stood near the door. "The car can take you anywhere you choose." She looked at the papers. "You still think I am leaving? I think you should be able to. That is not the same." No. For once he did not pretend otherwise. Evie picked up the annulment petition. The pages felt lighter than she expected. Damien's face revealed nothing. His hands did. They were closed tightly at his sides. "You could ask me to stay," she said. His jaw shifted. "I will not make you responsible for what I want. I am responsible for my answer, not your question." The room became very still. Damien looked at her. "I want you to stay." The words came roughly as if dragged from somewhere he had kept locked for years. "But I will not keep you through danger, money, gratitude, or obligation." Evie tore the papers in half. The sound was small. Damien's composure broke. Only for a second. It was enough. "The first time I married you, Evie said I was furious, terrified, and trying to outrun humiliation." She tore the pages again and placed them on the desk. "That woman needed your name." She stepped closer. "This woman is choosing the man." Damien looked at the pieces. "What are your conditions?" A faint smile touched her mouth. "You know me well. I keep my career." "Yes. I receive an official role in strategic intelligence for cross companies." "Yes. I have access to every decision that affects my safety." He hesitated. Evie raised one eyebrow. "Yes," he said. "You do not lock me away because you are afraid. I may argue. You may argue. I may assign security. You may explain why." Damien nodded. "No financial punishment if either of us leaves." "Agreed. No secrets disguised as protection." His eyes held hers. "That will be difficult. So will being married to me." I noticed. Evie looked toward the portrait of Damien's father above the shelves. "One final condition." Damien followed her gaze. "Remove him from the boardroom." "Why?" Because dead men do not get a vote. For the first time, Damien laughed. The sound was low and brief, but real. The next morning, he removed the portrait himself. 6 months later, Terminal 9 no longer looked abandoned. Glass offices stood where rusted equipment once gathered dust. Screens displayed logistics, data security models, and shipping routes from across the city. The steel desk remained in the center of the main hall. Fresh flowers covered it. Only a small group attended the ceremony. Marcus stood beside Anthony. Julian sat near Noah, who looked healthier now. Mason represented Evie's office and appeared deeply confused by the number of armed men pretending not to be armed. Linda sat in the final row. She had not asked Evie to invite Chloe. That restraint was the beginning of something. Chloe was not present. Evie had not decided whether forgiveness would ever include proximity. The decision belonged to her. She walked toward Damien in a simple ivory dress. No veil, no diamond large enough to prove anything, only the plain gold ring from the night they met. Damien waited beside the steel desk where they had signed the first license. The cut above his eyebrow had become a faint scar. The officiant asked whether Evelyn Parker chose Damien Cross freely. Evie looked around the terminal. The first time she stood there, she had no home, no plan, and no idea who she would become by morning. Now she had her own money, her own career, her own authority. She had every ability to leave. Yes, she said. Freely. That evening, Evie entered the Cross boardroom beside Damien. His father's portrait was gone. The wall behind his chair remained empty. A captain began presenting a security problem directly to Damien. Damien did not answer. He looked toward Evie. The chair beside him was no longer empty. She opened the file. Let's begin. Outside, Chicago glowed beneath winter clouds, cold and dangerous, its streets filled with doors that had once opened only for powerful men. The first time Evelyn Parker married Damien Cross, she was running from a ruined life. The second time, she had nothing left to prove and no one left to escape. She stayed because the choice was hers.